This conference will now be recorded.
Stream ki the. Are we live Facebook? So we are live YouTube also. Sir, we are live to the world. Welcome to Dr. TSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello. We have a revered and esteemed personality, Justice Ramalingeshwar Rao Garu. Welcome to this special show, sir. We are very much indebted to you. You have made our day. Today, November 26th, Constitution Day, National Law Day, and what a better way to celebrate than having our own Justice Ramalingeshwar Rao Garu, who is adored by everyone. I have been receiving messages since the poster made public yesterday night. Now let me just introduce a brief introduction so that I can allow our Justice esteemed guest to present his view or let him address on the election system which is going haywire or whatever you say. Elections are in place in GHMC Hyderabad, likewise in Kerala from where this show is being beamed live. Panchayat as well as municipality elections are taking place. So, the importance of the electioneering, that is why we have chosen this topic, and this esteemed guest will be making us very clear about the constitution vis-a-vis the electioneering, the electoral system, and the way the election commissions, whether it is Election Commission of India or the State Election Commission, independent in each and every state, how do they function, how are they functioning, and what should one, a citizen, should expect out of this, that too on November 26th, the constitutional day which we are celebrating, because it is the constitution which breathes life into every citizen, and one has to understand. Once you understand, that fear goes away. Once you understand, you will not be enticed. Once you understand, you will not be taken for a ride by anyone. So, that ignorance we should get rid of on this November 26th Constitutional Day and National Law Day as well. Let me have brief you about our honorable guest. Honorable Sri Justice A. Ramalingeshwar Rao hails from West Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh. He studied LLB and LLM International Law in Usmania University and enrolled as an advocate in High Court of Andhra Pradesh at Hyderabad in 1982. After 3 decades of active practice in various branches of law, he was elevated as a judge of the High Court on 21/9/2013 and retired on superannuation on 25/2018. He was designated as a senior advocate by the Supreme Court of India in September 2018 and has been practicing there since 2019. As a lawyer, he argued several important cases of public interest challenging capitation fee in medical colleges, lifting prohibition for protection of forests and tribal rights, etc. He worked as government leader and associated with Advocate General, handling most important cases of the government. After elevation, he devoted his entire time for redressing the grievances of the litigants with honesty and integrity. He disposed of more than 20,000 cases in a span of 56 months, and cases clarified the intriguing points of law. This is a record in its own self that shows his integrity. Apart from his passion for law, he has varied interest in language, literature, arts, astrology, and spirituality. He makes us to run. Said, "Are you ready to go for live? I'm coming live on the art literature. Are you ready?" That is how he questions our wisdom also. So that wisdom enables us to identify ourselves, the language or the culture. He is voracious reader and pens articles and gives lectures occasionally. During his tenure as a judge of the High Court, he edited a book for mediators. After retirement, he published a book in Telugu, compiling his articles written in Telugu, explaining the judgments of the courts to the common man in their own native sense, in the language they understand. That is the beauty of dissemination or imparting knowledge, and he is a master in that. He is a strong believer in democratic values and does not belong to any political party. That is why we have been championing the cause of democracy the last 1 week and so. And what a better way to have a personality who just believes in that. He feels that caste system is still operating as a hurdle for country's progress, and we have to go many miles to reach the constitutional goal of social justice. The present address is an attempt to create awareness amongst the general public of one of the important aspects of constitutional issues without which this democracy will not survive. And if the democracy has to survive, every citizen should understand what is election commission, what is election commission of India, what is state election commission, and how it works, in whose interest it works, because ultimately it is people participatory constitutional democracy which is the only one saving grace for India. And all those, right from prime minister to chief minister, cabinet secretary to chief secretary, they are all nothing but they work in the wisdom of people's interest, whether it is welfare or development. That is why the preamble is we the people. We the people, we constitute the constitution. And what a better way to have Justice Ramalingeshwar Rao Garu on this very National Law Day also. Sir, welcome to the special show. We are very much again indebted to you. Kindly go on, sir.
Good evening to all citizens and lovers of democracy. Today is a National Law Day, which was previously called as a National Law Day, but a Constitution Day. Now it is renamed as a Constitution Day. We call it as Samvidhan Divas also. Unfortunately, today we have to remember the attack of terrorists sponsored by a neighboring country on India. So, in this backdrop, we have to remember our responsibility and the values for which the Constitution was drafted and stood behind us. As Mr. Reddy rightly pointed out, the Constitution was drafted by us only, we the people. It is for us only. So, we cannot ignore the Constitution and do something else. Why I am saying is, after a few days of declaration of election to the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, I saw a news item on the TV saying that the biryani orders have gone up by 80%. Are the elections meant for biryani or liquor sales? Or is it a responsible process, at least to the educated electorate, educated citizens? That worried me actually. Who have become aware and we have advanced also over the years. If I recollect my childhood days of elections and the present elections, there is much progress undoubtedly, but still we are not able to capture the spirit of democracy. Most of the intelligentsia, most of the educated people are not taking the election process to their heart. For that matter, any issue which doesn't concern the people, they are leaving. But this is not such an issue which can be left. People think that election process, elections are for politicians only. They also think judiciary is for lawyers and judges only. Some other matter belong to a section of the people. But they are citizens, they are sons of the soil. We should always remember the constitutional values and the letter and spirit of the Constitution which we have enacted for ourselves. Our forefathers fought for independence and they put their minds and they drafted the largest book called Constitution of India. Today also, we are the largest democracy in the world. It is not simply conducting elections and getting someone elected. We have to understand the process. We have to understand how we can contribute our might for fair and free elections. Fair and free elections is a sine qua non for democracy. There cannot be any interpolation, interruption, or interference in the election process. One should be in a position to exercise his franchise freely and elect a right representative. But unfortunately, the evils of election process we are not able to eradicate. And in the coming few minutes, we will interact with the nature of the election process and the role played by the Election Commission. Actually, there is a lot of confusion. That confusion is creating a lot of problems also. What is this Election Commission of India and State Election Commissions? Why they are separate? Why they are acting independently of each other? Where is the question of preparation of separate electoral rolls? Why it should be revised frequently? There are so many things in this. Unless we understand the constitutional provisions and the laws governing the elections, we may not be in a position to appreciate the democratic functioning. I am not going into the deep aspect of the laws governing elections. The conduct of elections, right from preparation of voter list to the declaration of result and thereafter election disputes, is a vast subject. But briefly, we have to understand what are the constitutional provisions, how the system works, in order to apprise, in order to be aware of the process. So, I am broadly covering the subject, strictly confining to the topic, because the moment you talk about elections, people will be tempted to comment on the political parties. We are not politicians. Each one is having his own role. A lawyer is having a separate role, a judge is having a separate role, a bureaucrat is having a separate role, and a politician is having his own role. But what is required is fair play. Each one should confine to his limits and act accordingly. But unfortunately, because of the attraction of office, because of the attraction of power, some people are jumping to the other arena. This is not warranted according to me. After seeing the public life for so many years and being in judiciary and observing the executive, I came to the conclusion that the most powerful institution in this country is political executive. In the coming topics, I will briefly cover the aspects of power also. So, don't mistake me if I don't clarify any topic deeply, because it is not a topic to be covered within 1 hour. Suppose if I cross that 1 hour limit or reasonable limit, people get bored and they can further probe the subject in its various aspects. So let us start. The topic.
1 second, sir. I'll make you a presenter. Many greetings to you, sir, right from Professor Purushottam Reddy, everyone greeting you, Ravindra Prasad, Vijayanand, Raghu Murappa. They are very happy to see you, sir. They're all greeting you on this day.
Thank you very much. Let us start with the national song.
Sir. We salute the spirit, sir.
Thank you. So let us go to the topic. The introduction is, we should always remember that our nation comes first. Mera Bharat Mahan.
Yes, sir.
On this occasion, we should remember the sacrifice made by our Jawans on the borders. But for them, we will not be so free, so secure, and so happy actually. They are protecting our boundaries in the minus zero temperatures, and though we are uniting at the time of war, but on the other occasions, we are too much immersed in politics. We are not showing that required national spirit. That's what I feel actually. Even in the recent book of Obama also, he said that the growth of India is hindered by caste, corruption, and communal feelings. These three feelings actually we had to erase. We had to transcend these feelings and develop a national spirit and feel that we are all Indians, whether we belong to a particular caste or community or religion. That's why this is only a brief introduction to the actual democratic process. Unless we have that feeling of Indianness, we cannot progress further. Then what guides this nation? Though we may belong to different religions and we may have different books and different dharma shastras, what guides us is ultimately Constitution of India. Constitution of India is the source for all our laws. There is no other law, there is no other shastra beyond Constitution. That's why if any necessity comes, the government has to seek amendments to the Constitution, but so far amendments are made, the constitutional provisions govern our life. All laws are made under the Constitution of India only, and any law contrary to the provisions of the Constitution is void. In this backdrop, what are the responsibilities of the citizens? Actually, citizens should be not passive citizens. They should be first informed citizens, then participative citizens, and they should be active citizens. They should not be passive citizens. As I told you in the beginning, that this matter doesn't concern me, that matter doesn't concern me. Actually, we are too much worried or made to worry about Sushant Singh's death rather than important issues facing the nation. Unfortunately, the media, for its own purposes, whether you call it as TRP ratings or for other purposes, it is not educating the citizens in the right direction. Everyone thinks that education is a serious matter. Why should we educate ourselves? Why should we bother about something? If our life goes on like this, we will be happy. Actually, this should not be the thinking of a responsible citizen. A responsible citizen should have a basic understanding of the constitutional provisions and governance of the nation. Unless we understand the basic things, we cannot demand from our representatives what we want. We may not sometimes be aware of what we want to ask them. According to me, a brief knowledge of the Constitution of India is necessary for everyone, and fortunately I noticed that in CBSE syllabus or some other books, Constitution of India is also made a part of the syllabus. So the new generation is at least having some understanding of the constitutional provisions. In our childhood days, we used to study as a civics paper, but now in the changing times, the awareness of the constitutional provisions is very much necessary. Everyone knows that ours is a constitutional democracy. Our constitutional democracy is mainly run on the basis of adult franchise. This adult franchise we exercise periodically and we elect our representatives. This democracy runs on 4 pillars: legislature, executive, judiciary, which are having place in the constitutional history, and press is also added a 4th estate. So press is also as responsible as other 3 wings of the state. But we are not having clear demarcation between the legislature and executive. The representatives whom we elect, they sit in the assemblies, parliament, and they also act as ministers, as heads of the executive. That is how there is no clear demarcation, unlike in other democratic countries. Here, when we call it as executive, we should understand the distinction between the political executive and the administrative executive. Political executive is the head of the executive. Administrative executive is the bureaucrats and other officers who will implement the policy decisions of the government. We are well aware that judiciary should protect the constitution by examining the laws and actions of the government. All these roles as a watchdog, the press should discharge. But unfortunately, the press has become partisan and we are not able to get the true picture of the society by reading one newspaper or by watching one channel. This is the sorry state of affairs. And this should change. It is in the hands of the responsible journalists only. Who governs the nation? Suppose if you ask this question, the main power rests with the legislature and executive. The judiciary can only examine the law and interpret them. So, the elections are an important aspect because by casting vote, one is electing a representative who will govern the nation ultimately. But still, lot of changes have to take place in the political system itself. I am told by some of the people's representatives that They are also having their own limitations within the party. They don't have freedom to express their own ideas, even in the parliament and assemblies also. They cannot freely express their views and whip will control. There are so many inherent constraints faced by the members also. And the members should have full freedom within the party to express their views and convey their feelings to the public. But unfortunately, this is not happening even within democratic parties. There is no inner democracy within the parties. According to the study, there are 32 lakhs directly elected representatives in various types of governance. Out of 32 lakhs, nearly 31.5 or so are the elected representatives in the panchayats. So that is the first tier of our governance. The people are electing 32 lakhs representatives and they may belong to different political parties. So at the time of casting vote, the citizen is given the most responsible position to exercise the franchise with responsibility. So it ultimately affects the election of the representatives. You know that though reservation is provided to the women in Gram Panchayat, the husbands indirectly exercising the power of the women, and very few women are independently exercising the power, and this should also change. We don't have sufficient number of women representatives in the parliament, and the bill is not taking shape. In this context, the role of election commissions we had examined. This is an important and responsible role played by the election commissions vis-a-vis the voters. Let us see the brief statistics and how gigantic is the process. Out 90 crores registered voters are there for a population of 130 crores. And these 90 crores people are eligible to vote in the elections. Age of voting was initially 21 years and it was reduced through Constitution Amendment Act in 1988, and now the voters who have completed 18 years of age are eligible to vote. There are 2,354 registered parties with the Election Commission of India when compared to 53 in 1951 and 52. We are having 174 lakhs BVPATs, 10 lakhs 35,918 polling stations. Now when we come to the voter turnout, it was 45.70% in the first election of 1951-52. Unfortunately, it rose to 67% in 2019, and still it had to be improved in order to have a representative government. When you see this 67%, in 67%, various political parties contest, and sometimes a party which secures 30% of the votes will form the government. So virtually it is not a party getting majority of the voters. In spite of the same, when compared to the other political parties, because a particular party is securing more number of votes, more number of seats, it is forming the government. This also requires change. And when 10 crores was the election expenditure in 1951-52, now it has gone to 3,870 crores. In the face of this only, our Honorable Prime Minister is saying that we should have only one election for assemblies as well as the parliament. So that much amount every year, every 5 years we are spending at least. Sometimes it will be more than that also. I already told you that there are 32 lakh directly elected representatives of people spread over various types of governance. Actually, this election, though Marx has called religion is the mass of the opium of the masses, now election has become opium. You see the pandemic, you see the scare created by the coronavirus. In spite of this, we are seeing large number of people moving on the roads during electioneering. Are they behaving responsibly? What happened to the leaders? Is it advisable to the leaders to take so many people during the pandemic? And is it not risking the lives of the followers as well as others? This responsibility also should be undertaken by them. We are holding video meetings, virtual conferences. Then why should so many people show their strength physically, risking the lives of the followers? This is also a serious concern for our country. And I told you in the beginning itself that there is confusion with regard to the election commissions. This confusion came only after Constitution 73rd and 74th Amendment, giving power to the panchayats and municipalities and placing them in the Constitution. Previously, there used to be only Election Commission of India. Article 324 deals with the appointment of the Election Commission of India, and it used to be a one-man commission previously. But some of you may remember, Sri T.N. Session, who, taking the status of equivalence with a Supreme Court judge, thought that he is equal to a Supreme Court judge and wanted amendment to the warrant of precedence. And you are treating the office as a superior office, though he made several reforms in the election process. This egoistic attitude went to the Supreme Court and led to the amendment of the Constitution by making provision for appointment of the election commissioners, and thus it was made as a three-member body who are all equal in status. That amendment was challenged before the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court upheld the same. Coming to the state election commissions, Article 243A and 243ZA deal with the election commission for conducting elections to the panchayat and municipalities. They are called as state election commissions. If you see the wording in the beginning of 243K and 243ZA and compare it with 324, the first line will be almost same. So, the Supreme Court said the state election commissioners also exercise similar powers of the Election Commission of India, members of the Election Commission of India. I told you that there was only one chief election one election commissioner used to be there. Then subsequently it was made a multi-member body, and now it is called as the Election Commission. That Election Commission is for entire India, and it conducts elections to the Parliament, legislature of every state, and to the offices of President and Vice President. Members of Election Commission are appointed by President. Members will have status of a Supreme Court judge, but not equal to the Supreme Court judge. This was decided by the Supreme Court in T.N. Session versus Union of India. Coming to the state election commissions, for each state there is a separate election commission that is called State Election Commission. It conducts elections to the panchayats and municipalities in each state. The election commissioner is appointed by governor of the state. The state election commissioner will have the status of a high court judge. In terms of Article 243K and 243Z1, the same powers are vested in the State Election Commission as the Election Commission of India under Article 324. The words in the former provisions are in pari materia with the latter provisions. This observation was made by the Supreme Court in Tomar versus Municipal Corporation of City of Ahmedabad. What are the duties and responsibilities of the election commissioners? They are totally independent from the executive, just like judiciary. They undertake the education of the voters. Under the relevant acts, the political parties are registered and they ensure inner party democracy also. They have the power to disqualify for non-submission of election expenses. If any disputes come post-election of sitting members, they advise to the president with regard to their disqualification. Then there is international cooperation with other international organizations. Ours is the founding member of the Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. That is an international organization which completed 25 years in this year. This is called IDEA. Ours is one of the 12 founding members of this international organization. I told you in the beginning that they are independent. Whether they are truly independent or not, we have some cases now. The first case is case of Nandalal, who was working as a Maharashtra State Election Commissioner. There was some clash with the legislature in Maharashtra, and a privilege notice was issued by the Privilege Committee of the State Legislature. That notice he did not take, and in spite of giving the opportunity also, he did not appear before the Privilege Committee in Maharashtra. So, and the Privilege Committee sentenced him to 2 days imprisonment, and he was actually arrested and kept in jail for 2 days. This is the case of Nandalal. Then we have the case of Ashok Lavasa, who was an election commissioner of India. This is not a case of lack of independence, but this is a case of consequences of being independent. He was finance secretary to the government of India, and he was made election commissioner. But by exercising his independence, he wrote a dissenting opinion in the election commission in the matter of violation of model code of conduct by the Honorable Prime Minister and President of BJP party. So he wrote the dissenting note on the 3 of 5 EC decisions, and thereafter he stopped attending commission meetings also. Ultimately, he left the election commission and joined ADB. His daughter was also an IAS officer of Jammu and Kashmir cadre, and she also hit the headlines when she sought to file FIR against BJP leaders in the state for allegedly handing money in envelopes to reporters in Leh for favorable reporting. Then his wife, who faced income tax problems, son faced income tax problems. Ultimately, this man, who was to become Chief Election Commissioner, left the Election Commission of India by resigning and joined the ADB. And now, you know the case of Nimmagadda Ramesh Kumar Rao, Andhra Pradesh State Election Commission. This unnecessary controversy regarding the jurisdictions and powers of the state election commissioner are still going on, and the matter is pending before the courts. So, in the light of these cases, we have to see whether the election commissioners are independent or how they should be chosen, how they should exercise their duties. The concerned citizens should ponder over. Normally, in the case of different constitutional authorities, one should not overstep. The different constitutional authorities should try to settle their problems in an amicable manner without going to the public. Sometimes this type of issue comes with regard to the appointment of judges also. The recommendation made by the Chief Justice of India are not sometimes accepted by the government of the day, and by the change of the Chief Justice of India, sometimes the appointments are changed. How these things are happening is by sitting with the concerned people and sorting out the problems only. We cannot stretch the constitutional power to the extent of impossibility or impracticability. These cases illustrate how the election commissioner has to function in the democratic setup. Then, what are the legislations governing elections? The first one is Constitution of India. The second one is the Representation of the People's Act 1950 and the rules made thereunder. Next is Representation of the People's Act 1951 and the rules made thereunder. What is the difference between these 1950 Act and 1950 Act? I will partly deal with it. Then the Presidential and Vice Presidential Act 1952, Parliament Prevention of Disqualification Act 1959, Model Code of Conduct for the guidance of political parties and candidates, Code of Conduct for television broadcasts in connection with elections, Panchayat and municipal laws made in each state and the rules made thereunder. Each topic can be discussed elaborately in different sessions actually. So I am giving a glimpse of the legislations for the probing citizen to probe further with regard to the provisions of in each act and how they are operated. The Representation of People's Act 1950 mainly deals with allocation of seats and delimitation of constituencies for the purpose of election to the House of the People and legislature of states, qualification of voters at such election, the preparation of electoral rolls, and filling seats in the Council of States by the representative of Union Territories. So that is 1950 Act. 1951 Act deals with conduct of elections and houses of legislature of state, qualifications and disqualifications of members of those houses, the corrupt practices and other offences in such election, and disputes arising out of such election. Previously, the election commission used to decide the disputes, but now the election petition has to be filed in the concerned High Court having jurisdiction, and the High Court is supposed to dispose of the election petition within 6 months. But unfortunately, because of other pending matters, the High Courts are not able to dispose of the election petition within the specified time and sometimes the matters are going beyond the tenure of the challenged candidate. This also one of the areas where the election commission is thinking of making some amendments. Then coming to the actual election process, it starts with preparation of electoral roll. I already told you that the citizen over the age of 18 can vote in an election, and the right is given irrespective of caste, creed, religion or gender. But those who are deemed of unsound mind and people convicted of certain criminal offences are not allowed to vote. Then coming to the preparation of electoral roll, it is one of the fundamental duties of the election commission
Sir, I think,
to prepare the electoral
sir,
the election.
I think you need to charge your laptop or something, sir. That is the signal to you, I
Pardon?
think. Is it the charging of your laptop or something? It's an indication. You may have to charge your laptop.
No, not that indication. This is actually desktop is linked to the phone.
Right, sir.
Phone
Right,
messages are coming.
right. Please, please. Sorry.
According to section 13B of the Representation of the People Act 1950, the electoral roll for each constituency in a state or union territory is to be prepared and divided by an electoral registration officer. At the bottom of the hierarchy, booth level officers also will be there, and supervisors are also appointed. These people have to update the register periodically. Then, after preparation of the electoral roll, the rolls will be computerized, and the elector's photo identity card is also introduced now, and that is issued to the voters. The actual process of election starts with the issue of notification. Normally 7 days time is given for filing nomination, and last date will be fixed. Scrutiny will be done on the day following the last date for nomination. Thereafter, 2 days time will be given for withdrawal of nomination. After withdrawal of nomination on the same day, final list will be published. 14 days time will be given for the campaigning, and it will end 48 hours before polls. This is the process for election. Simultaneously, there will be a separate process for deployment of polling personnel. The first stage of deployment is identification of persons, whether they are a presiding officer or polling officers, and venue and time of training. That is the first stage of polling, deployment of polling personnel. Second stage comes at which stage the assembly constituencies is revealed, but polling station is not known to the polling personnel. There will be an observer in the second stage. At the third stage only, the allocation of polling station is done in the presence of the observer. This is the secrecy maintained for deploying the presiding officer and polling officer in 3 stages. After that, you know how the counting takes place, how the results are declared. After declaration of result, then the election dispute may come, and that election petitions have to be filed in the case of parliament and assembly elections before the High Court, and in the case of panchayat and municipalities before the tribunals constituted under the Act. In this point, we have to remember an important case which we read as students of law, that is Ashby versus White, that was decided some 300 years back. That Ashby was a popular. He wanted to vote in the election, but he was prevented by the constable by name White. Though he was prevented, Ashby did not keep quiet. He went to the court. The Court of King's Bench held against him, and one of the judges by name Lord Holt, Chief Justice, has dissented in the King's Bench, and ultimately his view was upheld by the House of Lords by a vote of 50-16. What Lord Holt said was, the right of a man to give his vote is a most transcendent thing and of a high nature. It is of highest importance and a great privilege, and to deprive that privilege is a great injury for a man who wants to vote. If the plaintiff has a right, he must necessarily have a means to vindicate and maintain it, and a remedy if he is injured in the exercise of enjoyment of it. There cannot be any right without a remedy. Right and remedy are reciprocal. And he gave examples also. We say that suppose if a person has not cast his vote, what is going to lose? Just like that we say. Then he gave examples. As in action for slanderous words, though a man does not lose a penny by reason of the speaking of them, yet he shall have an action. Suppose if a man accuses another man, though he does not lose in monetary terms, he can maintain an action. Suppose if a person is prevented from entering his property, though he does not immediately lose in the terms of money, he can maintain an action. And one of the defenses taken was, suppose if this type of action is allowed to maintain, there will be a number of cases like this. Number of people will come to court. Then he said that it is not an answer, because it is his valuable right, he can maintain that action. And the second aspect of the matter is, because a police constable has prevented that Ashby from exercising his right, he said that it is a lesson for public officers also to be more careful to observe the constitution of the cities and boroughs, and not to be so partial as they commonly are in all elections, which is indeed a great and growing mischief and tends to the prejudice of the peace of the nation. This is the wording he used, the Chief Justice. That growing mischief is still being practiced even for 300 years. Some people are prevented from exercising their franchise. And what he said is that suppose if you prevent a person from exercising his franchise, it will prejudice the peace of the nation. He went to that extent. Then you will be surprised. Now in the recent US elections, the credit for Biden's victory should be given to one African American lady called Mrs. Abrams. She was canvassing on behalf of Fair Fight Foundation in Georgia. She enrolled nearly 8 lakhs voters, mostly black voters, who were not given voting, who were not included in the voters list. Through her campaign only, she got included that 8 lakhs voters, and because of her campaign, the result went in favor of the Democrats. Ultimately, it tilted the result of the election in favor of Biden. How she did it? She did it in 3 important ways. A value framework informed by every citizen of his constitutional right to vote. So, we have to canvass, we have to make the voters aware that it is a constitutional right to vote, and we have to inform every citizen. It is not a casual piece of paper. We have to educate the people the value of the vote. And how she educated the voters is by placing the representatives on the ground. At each booth level, there should be a representative to canvass. But we are leaving it to political parties to do that canvassing, partisan canvassing. But we have to make neutral canvassing, saying that you choose your own representative, don't mind, but you exercise your right to vote. And for this purpose, she employed technological infrastructure for scale and sustainability. Now we have latest technology, and people are using mobile phones. So that by using the technology, we can bring more voters to the voting list and also make them aware of their right to vote and elect a proper representative. This is an important facet of the canvassing and democratic exercise of right to vote. Suppose if the voting percentage rises from 67% to at least 80%, the chances of winning will alter, and sometimes a truly representative majoritarian party may come to power. I will come to the reforms in the reforms promoted by the Election Commission. There, this is one of the points where it wants to prevent non-serious candidates from contesting the elections. This is the important aspect. These proposals were made for electoral reforms. There are several proposals pending with the government for electoral reforms. The first one is amendment to the Constitution of India by giving constitutional protection for all members of the Commission, budget, and independent secretariat for the Commission. This may not very much with the voters, but electoral roll matters. Section 20 within subsection 6 of the Representation of People's Act says Yeah, if a wife of any person is ordinarily residing with such person, she is deemed as ordinarily resident in the constituency. Though this right was given to a wife, the same type of right was not given to the husband. So the election commission proposed an amendment to section 26. Similarly, the election commission proposed amendment to section 28 of the Representation of Peoples Act 1950. The subsection says service qualification means being a member of armed forces of the Union, being a member of armed police force of a state, who is serving outside the state, being a person who is employed under the government of India in a post outside India. The reason given is it extended to the armed forces but not to Air Force Act and Navy Act. So they wanted to make amendment by including those forces also. Then use of common electoral rolls. Now there are separate electoral rolls for the parliament and state legislature and state election commission for conducting polls for the panchayats and municipalities. This is unnecessarily creating lot of expenditure burden on the exchequer. Sometimes the state commissions are using the electoral rolls prepared by the Election Commission of India. In that connection only, the commission proposed amending the state laws with respect to usage of electoral rolls prepared by the commission for the election of local bodies also. So common electoral roll is also one of the proposed electoral reforms. Then section 60 deals with overseas electors due to employment or other circumstances. Residents of India may reside elsewhere, but they are not given any special voting facility. So the Election Commission thought it fit to make an amendment to section 60 of the Representation of Peoples Act also to provide right of voting to the such overseas electors, either by proxy voting or postal ballot voting. And the last one is section 14B of the Representation of Peoples Act. Now, presently, 1st January of the year is taken as the cutoff date for enrolling as a voter. Suppose if a person completes 18 years after 1st January, he has to wait for another year for enrollment as a voter. This lacune also the commission wanted to rectify it. Then election management issues, making of any false statement or declaration before authorities, proposal regarding filing of false affidavit, section 126 of the Representation of Peoples Act 1951. These areas, the Election Commission proposed amendments providing open ballot system in case of election to fill seats, legislative councils, examination of poll or countermanding of election on the ground of bribery is also suggested by the Election Commission. There are certain changes suggested for election officials and logistics also. And the reforms deal with nomination of candidates and decriminalization of politics. Misuse of religion for electoral gain, this is already there actually by virtue of court decisions. Suppose under the IPC if it comes as an offense, then his election can be declared as void. Making bribery in election, these are the areas, and election campaign and advertisement ban on exit polls. You have seen the recent exit polls in Bihar election. Most of the exit polls have been wrong. Ban on government-sponsored advertisement before elections. Even after notification also, some governments are giving advertisements. Then 126 of the Representation of People's Act, paid news in connection with elections. These are the areas where the Election Commission wanted to make amendments, and those amendments are pending since 2017 with the government. Apart from these amendments, concerned citizens also can raise issues because of their experience in the day-to-day conduct of elections, and I hope the Election Commission would take into cognizance of those sessions also. This is the broad area of the election commissions and their duty to conduct elections. This is not a comprehensive address, but I wanted to briefly give you a picture of the process, of the laws involved, and the gigantic nature of the task undertaken by the election commissions. If we understand this and educate the voters, definitely our democracy will thrive. But there is a large scope, large vacuum for non-political initiative in this area. We are leaving it to the political parties, and the political parties are taking advantage for their own purpose. Suppose if a non-political initiative is there from the citizens, the election scene itself will change. Only for that purpose, this address is made on this occasion, and if it appeals to the listeners, we can meet quite often. And I thank Dr. Reddy for giving me this opportunity, and we end this address by national anthem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was a great presentation. Maybe lost because of some audio disturbance, but wonderful way to end this show on a high note. You have revived our spirits, honestly. I'll just try to bring you back to the normal level before. From your end, you can just say you can end the presenter aspect so that the screen will become full. From my side, if I dismiss it, the entire screen will go off. From your end, you can just see to that you are off the presenter list. You can just sign it off. And our special thanks are to Mrs. Soma Srinivas Reddy Engineers and Contractors, Hyderabad, for technical support and all other means of real good support. He is a great acquaintance, and scores of messages we have been receiving right across. And I'm happy that this is the noble way of presenting each and every citizen understanding that your vote is a valuable asset in a people participatory constitutional democracy. Whether it is Kerala or whether it is GHMC election, wherever it is of abundance importance that we understand that your vote values, your vote is the one which decides who you are going to elect, which party you are going to elect to rule you or to take care of your welfare and development aspects. So, friends, what a wonderful way we have celebrated November 26th, the Constitutional Day and National Law Day. My greetings go to each and every citizen of India while remembering the sacrifices on the Temple of Democracy Parliament, wherein so many have been martyred. We pray for their souls without forgetting that our constitution is nothing but the spirit of the freedom struggle is our constitution. In saying so, my heartfelt sympathies to all those reverent souls who sacrificed for giving us freedom by which we have this constitution. Because of constitution, we have this democracy going on. This is nothing but people participatory constitutional democracy. Let us celebrate November 26th as a constitutional day and also as a national law day, wherein each and every citizen is empowered with true knowledge of our constitution and law in its true perspective, so that once the ignorance we shed, believe me, once the ignorance goes away from us, we are better citizens to practice democracy by electing a proper representative, right from panchayat to the parliament, whichever party you may. But at the same time, you should learn to go to polling booth and vote. Not only that, take a pledge that every polling booth has got only just 900 to 1200 or at most 14 or 1500 voters. You should understand and you should know whether all of them are going to vote or else someone else is become a proxy to vote on your name. That is the case. This is with malafide intentions. It will destroy the spirit of democracy. So, you be vigilant. Don't allow proxy or someone to vote for you on your behalf. At the same time, even the polling agents of all political parties, my sincere request to you is don't get enticements. Spirit of democracy lies in your sincerity. If someone is enticing, someone is threatening you, have the courage, because we the people, we are the constitution, we are the authority, not that polling officer, not that chief minister, not that prime minister, not that union secretary, cabinet secretary or the chief secretary, right from DGP to all. They work for our welfare. Our taxes are the ones which take care of the needs of every official. Mind you, understand that. So that spirit of democracy lies in our understanding of our constitution. At the same time, our preference to vote on the polling day, this is quintessential. And not only that, if an election should be free and fair, you should have knowledge about election commissions and all those laws embedded in. So, remove fear, become knowledgeable, protect the nation. This nation is so beautiful, and I'm really eternally thankful to Justice A. Ramalingeshwar Rao Garu for his audio visual retreat. It simplified what is happening, what are the other things which are really in pendence since 2017. Hope the Prime Minister of India takes the lead and makes Election Commission of India really independent, so that people participatory constitutional democracy survives. Only then India, we say, unity in diversity, Bhinnatvanlo Ekatvam, that will survive. And as he rightly pointed out, every citizen is important in this country, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, or ethnic. Constitution provides everything to everyone. Kindly understand and propagate this. Thank you very much, sir. Again, once again, let us salute the spirit of the freedom struggle and the spirit of the Temple of Democracy Parliament who have been martyred, and all those who are still working for the cause of democracy everywhere. We all salute you. Let us all protect this great country. Let us participate. Let us vote. Let us not allow people who try to disturb this free and fair election. Come whatever may, remove this fear. Now we hope we have presented everything to you. Take care. See you soon with another topic. Thank you very much, sir. God bless you all.
Thank you.